How did you get the nickname Mad Dog?
My dad was a Marine, and I woke up doing push-ups, sit-ups, pull-ups, dips every single day, folding the corners of the bed and all that kind of stuff. And he told me, through this life, son, you got to be like steel wrapped in cotton. So you have to have that hardcore interior and the soft exterior as you're talking to people and helping people through this life. And I always took that to heart.
What's going on, Samson Strength Coach Collective listeners? Today's episode is another special edition of our Samson Legacy series where we're celebrating 50 years of Samson equipment and celebrating Dave and Linda for their great success. Today's episode, we have a good friend of Dave and Linda's and a legend within the field. I'm sure you are all very, very familiar with his name. This is Jeff Mad Dog Madden. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me. Excited about doing it.
Well, I'm stoked about it, seriously. And personally, this is exciting for me too, because your name was probably the second name I ever heard in the field when I first got into strength and conditioning. So It's a pleasure to meet you, and I'm excited to get to know you more. Can you kind of just give us a background of your career, some stops you've been, and then what you're currently up to as well?
Well, I mean, I've had a very interesting life, and it happened quick. I mean, I got my first job when I was 21 years old. And that was at the University of Cincinnati. After I graduated, I went on and played for the Memphis Showboats of the United States Football League. Went from there to Rice University. We were there for 5.5 years. Went from Rice to Colorado, where we won back-to-back championships and national titles. Had great players, just had fun. Went from there to the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, where we had great players, and I was always in charge of all sports, either an assistant or associate athletic director, as well as a strength and conditioning coach. Therefore, I got to touch all the different athletes and, all their coaches and everything else. I went from there to the University of Texas and, Longhorns for 17.5 years. So, there's been a lot of years in there, but it's been a whole lot of fun. And we got to meet great people like Dave and Linda, especially in the early years when we first started getting this thing done.
Well, that's exciting, and I love to hear it. Are you retired now?
Well, they say I am, but I still go around to different universities trying to, help them with team building, helping the strength coaches and that kind of stuff, so that's kind of like a consultant type business. I still have my explosive power business, my own gym stuff. The hurricane came in and killed my building, but I'm still going around helping people. Beyond that, there is no such thing as just retirement for strength coaches. We're coaching everything. I mean, I went from coaching my teams to coaching my granddaughter to coaching my wife. Anybody that's around you, you're coaching. So
that's correct. I had to learn very early on when I was with my wife that I cannot coach her as much as I do the athletes around here. That was a tough lesson for me to learn.
Well, you can't coach her as hard.
Yes, there we go.
No, they don't listen to you. You can't coach them as hard. You can tell them some things.
That's ahead. Exactly correct. 100%. Well, obviously we're celebrating Dave and Linda and their great success. When did you first encounter Samson equipment?
Well, I'm thinking back. We were probably 1984, 83, 84. I was at Rice University, and I got the pleasure to meet them both. They flew me out to New Mexico. Dave and Linda did an excellent job. They basically, he took me out in the yard and showed me all the different types of steel and, let me know where he got the steel from and that kind of stuff. We exchanged ideas back and forth. I mean, I was always trying to be ahead of the game, and that's one of the ways I wanted to go with Samson equipment, so I got to get in there and see those dumbbells being forged by 10,000 pounds of pressure with the rubber bushings and bumpers on there, but the things, that they had, that unilateral, bilateral leg press, that was the first one I had ever seen, and got on it and really loved it and made a big difference in our wins and losses. It makes a big difference in your program. The standing leg curl, had a great isolation to it. So and one thing about Dave and Linda is they wanted to listen to whatever you had to say, how it worked for you and how it worked for your athletes, or if there was anything they could do to change different things. But they were right on top of everything. We got to be pretty daggone good friends. I mean, I was helping, I wrote programs for Scott and those guys when they were running track and field back in the day. It's their sons, so it's a good relationship. They came to several football games over the years from the different places I've been at, but everywhere I've gone, I consistently stay with the Samson dumbbell. You know, One thing, the main reason is they've been so good that if anything ever happens to any of their equipment, they honor it, and they come out or you send it back to them or they send you something brand new. I mean, I think I'm in year 7 or year 8, and I had 2 dumbbells break, and they never broke before, but our guys were being kind of ruthless with them. I mean, they were taking the hundreds, and once they get them, they get excited, and then they throw them, instead of just placing them back like they're supposed to. And I told Dave that, and he had no problem. He just, next thing I know, a few days later, I had 2 new dumbbells. So you can't beat that.
Yeah, especially being able to fly out and actually see how everything is made. That's a pretty rare experience to me.
Yeah.
And I've heard a lot of different coaches describe that. What was it like actually seeing the process of how all the equipment was made?
Well, it was good because, I like stuff like that, so to actually see it and him talk me through it, go through the warehouse, see the guys in there working, guys and girls in there working and what they were trying to get accomplished. I'm sure that the whole thing has expanded so much more since the early 80s, but they were on top of things, and he had a great price for his steel, and he let me understand the thicknesses of the steels and what would make the difference because I was looking at buying these big, huge ones, just to look massive. But then when he showed me how much stronger the ones he was using was compared to that, I was right on time.
And so you mentioned with the unilateral leg press and these kind of different pieces of equipment and staying ahead of the curve. How does that translate to wins for you? How does that help your team win?
Well, it all translates to wins. I mean, the bottom line is you're always trying to find an edge. You're always trying to find something to make it better. I mean, of course, we squat, we front squat, we do step ups, we do all lunges, we do everything else that other people do. But when you had that unilateral, bilateral, you can do it together sometimes and you can do them apart sometimes. So it's amazing how that worked, and I would sit up there and fool with it and try to push it with my hands, get in the front squat position and push up, you know, uh, just to make it seem that, there was something else that our linemen and stuff could do. So, that's one thing about you. If you're a good coach, you're always trying to find different ways to do things to try to make your team better.
And can you talk to me a little bit about that collaborative process? Because we've had different coaches on, like I remember Bill Ferrin came on and talked about how they needed equipment for 7 feet tall players, right? They needed
Right.
things that could really help their weight room. Scott Warman talked about a lot of different designs that he made. First of all, what did it mean to you to have somebody who you could would listen to you and really want to see what you wanted out of your weight room? And then were there any things that you kind of collaborated on that you were really proud of in your partnership?
Well, everybody listens to you, so don't get it wrong. They're gonna listen because they want your money, okay? Because you have the budget to pay for whatever's going on and whatever you need. When I say listen, I mean he took the time to actually listen and go through it with you and try different things to see how it would work. Whether I don't know if it was like what was that thing called? It's a small rack, but I wanted it wider and I wanted it taller, just like you said with Ferran. Since Ferran's got those guys, I want everything where I can have a 7 footer in there. I wanted it wide because my linemen were big dudes. I mean, big 300-pound guys at 6'7", 367. I mean, these were some giants back then even, it was some big boys, so we had to make sure it's big enough, it's strong enough, it's sturdy enough. And that's one thing he always did. So when I talked about, making situations to where we have 6 inches more and inside, you know, that throws off your jigs. It throws off all your stuff you have already. But if you can do it, you'd be amazed what you can get, and that little 6 inches made a big difference.
Absolutely. Well, it totally revolutionizes how you can train, and like you said, I mean, those are massive proportions for players, especially back in the '80s, like you're mentioning. Let alone today. Obviously, there's going to be specialized equipment that's necessary. You know, you go out to Samson, you're able to experience the actual building and the actual company. What was your first kind of impression when you met with them? What was the impression that you had of Samson? Let's say even before going out to the company, and then afterwards getting to meet everybody.
Well, just so you understand me, I deal with people. And that's the most important thing, and they're good people and they got great hearts. And when you have folks like that, that are Christian folks that, really care about what's going on with you and what's going on with their program and trying to find a solution to try to help you get better, that's what makes the difference. I read through people pretty well. I've been blessed with that foresight to see some things. And I'm just blessed to know that I had those folks in my life and they were there for me. And they also helped me, have a great, great, successful career.
Well, that's amazing. So I was actually on the phone with Scott. He told me kind of an interesting story, and I wanted to see if we could go back to this one. He told me when you were working over at Colorado that
Hmm.
I believe the University of Colorado priced out, and I cannot remember the name of the department right now for some reason. It's not purchasing, procurement, right?
Hmm.
They priced out a weight room for you, and then procurement said you have to end up having to go with a different company. You have no choice. You kind of got to go with them. And I believe Scott was saying that Dave said ultimately that company's not going to be able to give you the same equipment that we are. The specs aren't going to be correct. And you ended up sending back almost every single piece. Can you tell me about that story a little bit?
Yeah, he's telling company secrets there. And tell Scott also, I helped him. He wanted that design with that dumbbell where you can switch weights on the dumbbell. He owes me one of those. So anyway,
I'll
I got a weight
communicate for
room
sure.
out there. I need that. Anyway, but when you talk about the Colorado project and what happened there, yeah, I had a guy come in from Ohio, and I'm from Ohio, but he was a nice guy and he had great ideas on different things. He undercut all the pricing pretty much almost by 50%. So when your university, the only thing you can purchase at a university when I was, doing it was up to $10,000 and it had to be under. The only way you can do it with a signature only is if that was just one unique piece that nobody else had. So when you're talking about racks and you're talking about, bench presses and inclines and all that kind of stuff, everybody makes them. Okay. So, I mean, all the equipment companies make them. So you had to have justification of why you're going to spend on upwards of 100 plus thousand dollars on equipment. So this guy came in, he 50% of everything at the most because they're all closed bids. And you as a strength coach don't know who's going to get the bid until the bid has been granted by the university. And I'm not ever going to do anything illegal, but I know who had the great ability to do it and who was an upstart company. So the upstart company came, they won the bid, I was like, okay. And they won the bid. He brought a bench press, an incline, a multi-purpose bench, and one squat rack. And I had a brand new 15,000 square foot weight room, and that's all he brought. you know, and that and
Insane.
and that was late. I mean, that was way late. So I got a brand new building and I got all my old equipment, from the 70s in there, So I put it all in the middle of the room, and I remember our administration coming up, well, why don't you move it all out? Why don't you put it like, no, no, no. I'll put it right here so everybody can work out right in the central area. I was doing that on purpose because I was trying to let them know you need to unleash the purchase. You need to unleash the books so I can go ahead and get the people in here that can do the job the right way.
And so how long did this process take? Because, I mean, you got guys you're trying to train, right? And you've got one squat rack, one bench. I mean, that's going to be a long process there, I'm sure.
Well, you got to understand now we're coming off the national championship. So we won a lot, and so it's not like we didn't have money, but we the Dow Ward Center is what we built. We built a huge 100,000 square foot facility. Well, I can't remember. We might be under 100. I know Texas does everything real big, but back then, in late 80s and early 90s, it was a premier place. But it was a premier place where they did not qualify the money for the equipment inside. You got the formation of the gym. You got the beautiful windows, look out on Folsom Field, look at the mountains and all that kind of stuff. You got a nice 20-foot patio out there. You can go have lunch or something. But having lunch is not winning championships. So inside the room, there was all from the old school Nautilus stuff to, I mean, just stuff. Yes, we won a national championship with that stuff, but our players sucked it up and they knew they were going to get a new building and they knew they were going to get new equipment, but they didn't get it for months, so, and that bid had been in for months and then we took more months to get it, so anyway.
Yeah, it's a long process and you want to train your guys.
Those are things you try to forget that happened to you in this business. But I mean, that's part of it, so strength coaches that are listening, they need to understand there's processes you have to go through. Every university is different, and once we went through that process, they had a better understanding as yes, the strength and conditioning coach knows what they need, and that was the point that I got across. And being an associate athletic director, I was able to talk a little bit more crap to them than
which is always good.
Right.
How do you communicate that to administration? Because obviously as strength coaches, we know that it's very valuable to have this high quality equipment. The players, like you mentioned, even know that they know that it's a big piece of their training and they need to have access to this equipment. How do you communicate that to administration to really explain the need besides a bottom line number of, okay, they can go cheaper, so we should go with them?
Well, what happened with me that I was truly blessed. I mean, to have so many wins. I mean, it's just like, just like Boyd Epley at Nebraska at the time, he can get what he wanted. So once you get to that point and you get a donor involved in it, like some of these folks are now with this NIL. If I put my name on a piece of equipment, I think I would have made a little bit of money. So but I'm watching these kids now, signing for 4 million, signing for 5 million. I mean, that could get you a whole brand new weight room and everything else you need and pay guys salary for a year, so it's a little different now than it was back then. But you have to have an understanding person, whether it be your president or whether it be your administrative budget person or the athletic director. And a lot of these athletic directors are becoming vice presidents of universities now, if you noticed. They have their thumb on it and the pulse, but you have to have a good enough relationship with them to let them understand that you know what you're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you got to have that good relationship, like you said. Ultimately, what was that first lift like when you had the full weight room together? Everybody, the full facility's done. The players finally get unleashed into this brand new weight room. What was that like?
Well, it's pretty much like you see on YouTube and all the other stuff now with all these folks. Back then, we didn't have all that cameras, and when we had a camera, it was like a big TV camera or something like that you had to put on your shoulder, and we didn't have everything like that in the weight room back then. So those guys were excited. They were happy that they had the good stuff, as they call it. And what happens after that? After those early 90 years, weight rooms became show palaces. I mean, I won weight room of the year 3 times at Texas, because it was a show palace. I mean, it was 25,000 square foot weight room, but, I had a donor, Dr. Nasser Al-Rashid, who's a tremendous donor. Whatever you want, whatever you need, he fly me anywhere around the world to go get it. I was excited about that. So it was in my brain and my staff's brain to sit up there when we saw different pieces across the country that we wanted, or we saw something that might be a good interest, or we put our heads together to find a way to change something to make it better, he was right there with us to just write the check. So that's a wonderful thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess one thing I'm curious about too, because in my own personal experience, I've had donors come up to me and kind of start that conversation about, okay, what do we need to do to help this weight room out? What do we need to do to make this the best in the Sun Belt for basketball? Right.
Right.
How did you develop those relationships? What were the things that you focused on? Did they kind of approach you first, or did you actively go out and outreach to try to get the best equipment?
No, I didn't have to do that. I was very fortunate at Texas when they recruited me and brought me in. I met the governor, who turned out to be the president, Bush, and had a great relationship with him. I met several dignitaries, as well as Darrell Royal, who was a famous coach from who had won 3 national championships at Texas. He was there. I mean, all these people I talked to on my visit to get me to come. Earl Campbell. I mean, just people that are phenomenal about the pride and winning tradition of the Texas Longhorns. So I had an open situation like that. The guy that I told you about, Dr. Nasser Al Rashid, he had built the weight room. So in his he gave the first $1 million, and when Dana LeDuc was the strength and conditioning coach, he was a great friend of mine here, and that made Texas the standard that was up above a lot of people. Then he was out of the program for a while. When I came back in, he told me, he said, "You and your family will never want for anything." And what these are the things I expect you to do, and I did them, and like you said, you won the weight room of the year three times in the years that you were here, and you put it on a national scene, and you've done everything to help these guys and girls win championships. Because one thing about athletic departments, when football's rolling, the majority of the sports start rolling. So when you're winning in football, and then you're winning in basketball, and then baseball's playing for national championships, and then we had swimming and diving winning national championships every year. It was golf got started winning national championships. So what happened was that ball rolls and flows, and everybody wants to win. And when you got a coach, that myself, that has those guys. I went to watch the women's basketball. I took my guys over uh, to watch when I was in North Carolina, to watch the girls play field hockey, and went to practice. And the coach was like, "Well, you guys don't have the field yet." And I'm like, "No, Karen, I know that. I brought them here to watch champions win. I brought them here so they can see what it takes to win." We are, I came to North Carolina, they were starting to win, but they had not won big. So when the field hockey team had won a national championship the year before, and they were practicing, and I wanted our guys to sit there for 15, 20 minutes in an orderly fashion and watch the girls work. And when they did it, they're like, wow, they get after it. And I'm like, yeah, they do. Now let's go on the other side on the other field, and let's get after it. So
Yeah, that's a great program with a lot of success, obviously. So
mhm.
it's great to see other people win. And I love the actual application of it, right? And one of my favorite things that I always have this conversation every year with our new players that come in, because I work with basketball.
Mhm.
And they always sometimes get a little bit jealous, I think, especially at App State, great football program. And so basketball is not nearly as big here. And they always kind of look at football a little bit, and they're like, well, we don't really want them to win. We want, basketball to win, so people come to our games more. And I said, you've got it 1,000% wrong. Not even 100%, it's
Yes.
1,000% wrong. We
Yes.
want football to be as successful as possible. We want football to get a lock in for the playoffs, everything that we can possibly have, because like you said, football really trickles down and helps everybody in those situations.
Mhm. No
No.
question. And that's what I was, like I said, I was fortunate enough back then to I had every sport. So if you got all sports, you can do a whole lot more, And then when I went to North Carolina, I started building a staff to where, I had different staff members go with the different teams. And as I told our boss, the Lost Dodge here at Texas, that there will be a day when every major sport has their own strength coach. And he's like, no, that'll never happen. I don't think that it happened really quick. And he started understanding because those strength coaches got into those programs, and it's really like having a whole nother coach on your staff because they don't just do strength. You got all the flexibility, you got the speed training, you got the distance training, you got everything. And when you're doing basketball, you got, even if you were doing swimming, you'd have wet training, then you have dry land training. So, I mean, there's so many different things that we do that I'm so excited now that athletic directors are starting to understand that how valuable the strength coach is, and I can remember standing in front of athletic directors at the meeting and just tell them there's going to be a time when the strength coach is going to make $1 million, and well deserve it because, basically the head football coach says, this is my team. You got them, 3-4 months later, they come back, so I mean, then you turn it back over to them. So when you do that, you're as important as offensive coordinator and the defensive coordinator. So that was,
Absolutely. I mean, you spend the most time with them pretty much at all times. And, I think about now, obviously traveling with basketball. I mean, most of my time is I think about we've got 2 hours to lift in season. And the rest of my time is, okay, stretching guys, mobility, setting up nutrition stuff, making sure that everybody's warmed up. Like that's what the most of my time is spent on in season. So like you said, it's like having another coach around who can really be there to help and assist the program. And it makes a huge difference. I remember when I first came here, it was my birthday and our coach was upset that I was at practice. He was like, "Why are you at practice? It's a late practice. Go home." And I was like, because the previous coach strength coach never went to practice, right? And I said,
really,
"Coach, I understand that, but like I'm a coach with the team. I'm here at practice. This is the reason why I'm here, so I can be a part of the team. I can see how you guys coach, what the language is, and then we can eventually integrate it into what we're trying to do with the weight room too." And he was cracking me up because he was really trying to get me to go home, and I was like, "No, it's my job. I'm going to be here." And so now they don't even second guess it when I'm there at practice or film, whatever it may be, because ultimately you have to be around for all those things to be a part of the team and to be another coach.
well, I tell you that's a great story, and one of mine is when my birthday came up and they bought Bevo is our big Longhorn. That whole group, the Cowboys came over. They had a whole celebration, brought a cake and bought Spurs, and in the Southwest Conference, and then now the Big 12, Big 8, then Big 12, and now the SEC. When a new head coach comes the into the conference and you come to a home game at Texas, they present you with a beautiful cowboy hat. I mean, a very expensive one, like a $500 hat. Then they give you a pair of Spurs, silver Spurs group. And they don't usually bring Bevo, but they sure did, So I was really excited about the fact because it was a total surprise. I was just finishing a workout and that group came through the door, and asked me to come outside, and then they presented everything. So I thought that was a great birthday, because I had no idea people knew when my birthday was.
Absolutely. Happy birthday. And I'm sure you
Mhm.
still hold on to those. Those are treasured possessions now for
Oh
sure.
yeah, no question, no question. Like I said,
Absolutely.
that's what they present to the visiting head coach on this first trip into Austin, Texas.
Wow. And now it's coming on your birthday. Happy birthday. Big birthday there. Incredible.
Yeah.
Well, you mentioned meeting Dave and Linda in the 80s. But ultimately, obviously these companies all kind of have a brand and a reputation and they're known throughout the strength and conditioning world. What was the impression of Samson at the time in the 80s, and what do you believe the impression of Samson is now?
Well, I'll adjust that question. Once again, I told you I'm in the people, and I like them. So I know they're giving you everything they possibly have to give you the best product. So I'll listen to them over some other people. You know, Scott and them, they got to come on. They got to do their thing. I'm teasing him. No, I'm teasing him. No, he's doing a good job. His brother's doing a great job. Those guys are great guys. They were raised right, and they show respect at all times. It's only because I've been in the business for 42 years. I remember them when they were kids. So, they're doing a great job. They're doing an excellent job. I looked through the book that you guys sent with all the new products. I mean, it's first class work. It's what do you call it? It's beautiful work. So I mean, they're putting the logos, the names, they're putting everybody's information on there. I mean, it's just first class work, you know. So and Linden Day would have nothing less than that. So, you know, I would just speculate that it's going to continue to grow and it's going to continue to be great.
Absolutely. But I can agree, Brian and Scott got to come on a little bit, right?
Hmm. They're young guys. They're young
Yeah,
guys.
absolutely. No, they've been nothing but amazing to me. So,
Yeah, I'm sure.
um, so from we touched on this just a little bit, right? With talking about kind of the unilateral leg press and just different variety in equipment. But from your perspective, how has Samson influenced the field of strength and conditioning?
Well, I think they've been a great influence. I mean, you got to think now. They started at 76 maybe around then, and I didn't get to meet them until 83, 84. Uh, you know, but antiquated equipment is what was in the 70s. I mean, if you didn't, you had your Nautilus. I mean, that was good. Then you had a universal machine. You know, so they came in and changed a whole lot of things, you know, and even from having stations and that kind of stuff. I mean, they did a tremendous job. So when you think about the innovation of it, I mean, you know, Dave was on the cutting edge. He was always, uh, you know, I don't know whether we was with his engineer or he just had an engineering degree himself, but he just had all the thoughts in his brain on how things should be. And he was a lifter. So I mean, when you got somebody that, you know, does handle the weights and that kind of stuff, it makes a difference. And Linda had tremendous personality. She was always, whenever you call, she'd always would put you right to the front of the line, you know, and get you in there. And if you had any kind of questions about anything, she'd handle it, you know. So it was a very professional organization just run by a few people.
Absolutely. And that's something that I've heard universally from a lot of different guests and people who have worked with Samson is just the ingenuity and the personability of the company is really what kind of drives it and what allows it to be successful. Did you work on any other projects? Obviously, we mentioned the big project of setting up the Colorado weight room. Did you work on any other projects that were memorable for you with Samson?
Well, you know, the main thing with them is wherever I go, I'm gonna get dumbbells. You know, so I mean, where else can you get? Well, I mean, now you can do it, but back then, 2.5 pound increments. So I had dumbbells from 5 pounds up to 150 pounds in 2.5 pound increments. And then after 150 to 200 was all 5 pound increments. So I had a lot of daggone dumbbells. I mean, that was a whole wall, you know, and it made such a big difference because when you're lifting and say get up to 100 pounds and you're excited, but you really can't do 105. So now you can go 102.5, train at that, and the next thing you know, you jump up to 105. You know, and that way, I as the coach don't sit up there and have to pull you through everything and make sure you got it. You got it. You know, no, go ahead and do it. You know, so
Absolutely. I've always said the most underrated piece of equipment in a weight room is a 2.5 pound plate because
yes,
ultimately it makes you have a huge difference, right? And you
big
can
time.
really train and get better in smaller increments in the progressive overload piece.
Hmm.
I've heard some funny stories. You know, some people have some funny stories with Dave and Linda or working with Samson. Do you have any funny stories that you can recall or recollect?
Well, when you say funny stories, I don't. You know, we were more businesslike. You know, they were
Mm.
very friendly. You know, made sure that you know I was excited to see him come to the different football games and that kind of stuff, and get to hug him after we win games. I mean, so that was more of a friendly, you know, type thing. You know, but I don't have anything funny. I mean, because they did their job. You know.
Absolutely.
I
And
I
it's all
I guess
business,
I'm
which is
boring
good.
like that. Yeah. Well, I mean, it was friendly business though. So don't get me
Yeah.
wrong. I mean, it was friendly business. They said we're going to do this on this day, and it got done. You know, they said we're going to be here at this time, and they were there. You know, so I mean, to me, that's 100% greatness right there, because a lot of people say they're going to do things and they don't do it. I mean, just like
Mm.
today, you said we're going to do this podcast. I'm like, okay, my computer broke. How can I get the podcast done? Found a way. and now we're doing
Mm,
it. So, I mean, you got to do what you say. And that's one thing about them. If they say they're going to do something, they're going to get it done.
absolutely. Impeccable with their word, and they're going to make
Yes.
sure they're there for it. So,
Hmm.
okay, this is a personal. I've got two personal questions for you and things that I've always been curious about. The first one, I have not heard this story. How did you get the nickname Mad Dog?
Wow. We got to go back. It's probably older than you are.
I'm 29, so possibly.
Oh yes, my
Yeah.
kids are almost 40.
Okay,
No,
there we go.
yeah, no. It's just like my dad was a Marine. And I woke up doing push-ups, sit-ups, pull-ups, dips every single day, folding the corners of the bed and all that kind of stuff. And he told me through this life, son, you got to be like steel wrapped in cotton. So you have to have that hardcore interior and the soft exterior as you're talking to people and helping people through this life. And I always took that to heart. When I hit somebody on the football field when I was in high school, uh, my coaches used it as an example to say, you got to be like him. You got to be like a mad dog out here playing. And I'm like, because what you don't understand and you don't know, many people don't know, my first nickname was Samson. So up until that point, they called me Samson. Why'd they call me Samson? Because I looked like that daggone emblem of Samson, and I had a big afro back then, and I had all those muscles, popping out of my face and everywhere, but Samson and Delilah, you remember Samson got his hair cut, and that was his strength. But that's why they called me Samson, because I had the big boom hair. Long story short, when my coaches started calling me Mad Dog, it went on. And then I had to defend it for the rest of my life. So,
I'm sure you did, but I'm glad you
mhm,
carried it with you through the rest of your life too. Because
mhm.
I was talking with another strength coach before, and I said I got a podcast coming up, and he said, "Who's on?" And I said Jeff Madden's coming on. He said, "You mean Mad Dog?" And so your people are very familiar with your name, which is fantastic. My next question for you, and this one I'm just very curious about, was what was your experience like winning the national championship? Because I've been fortunate enough to win conference championships, but winning a full level national championship is something that's kind of next level. What was that like for you?
Which time?
The best response possible. I loved it. Any of the times.
I tell you this, and it's all about your athletes, and how they perform. I've been blessed and fortunate to coach over 35,000 athletes, and out of those groups, I'm still in contact with probably 30-40% of them, come Father's Day, Christmases, New Year's, and that kind of stuff. I'm always getting texts or people calling or stopping by. So you coach people, you coach them for the rest of their life, really. As I told my guys and girls, when you come to the school, it's a 40-year experience, because you're going to be dealing with people 40 years from now. So just enjoy it every step of the way. I've been blessed to coach over 300 plus uh, professional football players, probably about 100 NBA, track and field Olympians, gold medalists, several of them. I mean, not just one or two, a whole bunch, So, I mean, it got to the point where I stopped counting, and I don't mean that in a negative way. I don't mean that in a cocky way. It's just a blessing that's been anointed on my life. And I'm able to pass that on to the kids, but I played for 4 national championships in football. I brought home 2, and I can tell you every reason why I didn't win those other 2, and it's great to be in the game, but it's a whole hell of a lot better to win the game, and that stuff will stay with you for the rest of your life. I mean, I went back to Colorado. Uh, Cordell Stewart was getting put into the Hall of Fame, and he brought me out there to be with him at the presentation. And I tell you now, every restaurant we went in, people know who you are. I mean, and we're talking about 1990 championship, and this is 2024 or 23, and they still knew who I was. So that was a blessing. I mean, the media came out. What we're doing right now, we had to do podcasts and everything. So, to win that stays with you. to lose that stays with you too. So you're better being on the winning side, but the opportunity that it affords people is what's tremendous.
Absolutely. And like you said, those texts and those athletes who reach out really mean the most to you because you know you made an impact on their life. I'm
Right.
curious, you just mentioned that why the reasons why you didn't win those two championships. Do you mind sharing with us why?
Oh yeah. Well, the first one was in 1989 against Notre Dame, and they had a phenomenal team. We unfortunately had lost Sal Nessie, who was our quarterback. He died of inoperable stomach cancer, but we were undefeated going into the game number one. We lost the game, I thought, because we had a couple guys. We got to the game and they were so excited about the game. They're excited about partying, as opposed to winning the game. What I mean by that is that first group consumed too much alcohol, first and foremost. And so every year we had different rules and regulations. Whereas before we would just treat them like men. We saw that we got some boys. We don't have all men. Some of them are going to be boys. So we had to put the discipline in place. We had to send three of our key players home that were involved in that big time offense, and they got drafted still, but we had to send them home from the game because they did some things they weren't supposed to do. So yeah, that hurt us bad. Our star running back breaks the leg during the game. Our quarterback gets hurt. Our second team quarterback gets hurt. I mean, so there was things that happened that we found ways to defend. There was way too many people in the hotel because our kids couldn't get to things on time because you had, you know, 3, 4 elevators, but they get so packed that our kids couldn't get down from because we were in towers. We were way up there. We couldn't get down fast enough for meetings. So you'd have a few really good players being late and they had never been late in their lives. So there's little things. So we learned how to switch up and do different things. So when we went to the next one, when we played Notre Dame again in 1990, and we found a way to win, you know, and it was great.
Absolutely. So it's just quick, small adjustments that, I
Hmm.
mean, like you said, immediately the next year, you're able to go back and win from there.
It's hard to win back to back, but we were fortunate enough to be in that situation to get back to the game, and to now, I mean, you watch these guys and guys playing now. I mean, it's a great situation, but you got a lot more games to play, so you got to make sure your teams are prepared for all those games. This is like you do in basketball. I mean, and get out there and you want to get to the tournament, so when you get to the tournament, how many games will you have to play for the whole year?
I mean, hopefully you would play one at a time.
Yes. Key point. You play one at a time, but your volume of games are more.
Yeah.
The extension of how long you're away from your university is more. How far they are away from their academics and more. So those are things you got to make sure that you have people to help them do different things as far as academics and everything else, because it's still very important to graduate. Very important.
Absolutely, and especially
Mhm.
with the realm now, a lot of guys have their academics are kind of messed up, with the NIL piece. So try to
There's
get
no
them to graduate,
question.
yeah, not easy.
No question.
Well, well, I mean, seriously, this has been very exciting for me to speak with you, and it's been very exciting to kind of reflect on Samson. Ultimately, what would you say directly to Dave and Linda as they celebrate 50 years of Samson Equipment?
Congratulations on 50 years of Samson Equipment. Congratulations for helping all strength and conditioning coaches make their programs better. You guys were a joy to be around. I look forward to seeing you every time we went to the different conferences, just to hear what was new and what was going on. So, congratulations on building a great career. Congratulations on building a great family and grandkids and that kind of stuff. We're watching. We're glad and we're happy for you, and we wish you the best. Thank you.
Excellent. That's a fantastic final message.
Mhm.
For our listeners, I know you mentioned at the beginning that you still have a business that you operate where you go around and help other coaches. If they're interested in working with you or if they want to hear more about the business, what would be the best way to do that?
I'll give you my email contact stuff. So I'll
Perfect.
give that to you.
Yep, and we'll put it in the show notes and make sure they have it. So,
Okay.
well, Mad Dog, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. It's been great to get to know you, and it's been a fantastic episode.
My pleasure. Thank you very much. Have a great
Absolutely.
day.